Hi everyone, so this video will be about requiems. Requiems are written by a lot of composers, a lot in Baroque time. Of course, we know maybe the most one, the one in Romantic time, the Mozart and Verdi are maybe the most famous, but actually some modern composers also wrote a lot of requiems. But I want to focus today on the one I like the most, actually the one that impacted me the most, and I want to share why and how different they are. So basically a requiem is a mass for the deaf that's in the Catholic Church. So it's a kind of funeral mass, and there is a liturgic text. So basically it's mostly based on the mass text you would sing or read during this funeral. So some people followed this, and some people decided to delete some parts or to develop some parts, and some wanted to make more musical pieces and more real mass, like it's useful for the church. So the most famous and the first one I will mention is Mozart Requiem. It's one everyone knows. It's from 1791, so it's the first one in the list I mentioned. It's a classical requiem. Mozart didn't finish it, and his student, apparently Susmayer, finished it. And it's actually a very, let's say, classical, very emotional one. There is this like Dies Irae and Lacrimosa who are super emotional. For me, it's one of the most, indeed, like I said twice, emotional requiem. It's one that brings you to tears the quickest, I would say. It's the most saddest requiem. So there is a piano solo score of this. I will not play the orchestral pieces because of copyright reasons. So there is a piano transcription of Klindworth, which by the way was a student of Liszt. And it's also one of the requiems that where from the beginning you have the emotions are there. It's like very deep from the first part already. This Rex Tremende is also a very dramatic part, like of course, the piano, it never has the same dimension as with choir and orchestra. Also, that's one of the things of the Requiem. It's a work for choir and orchestra, sometimes soloist, and people voices screaming, especially if it's in a mass, like if it's 100, 500 people screaming, with orchestral support, with the right instrumentation, gets super intense, right? On the piano, you can just imagine what it's doing. Then you have Recordare, it's a bit a softer one. You have the famous Confutatis in Amadeus. He's writing this bass and he's dictating it to Salieri, who in the film is the one who killed it, but apparently in reality that's not the case. So it starts like this, it's the famous one. Tricky to play at the piano, but it's mostly generally the effect. So one of the most, and then one of the nicest plays of the Requiem is the Lacrimosa. Liszt, by the way, did the transcription of this play, of this part, and I think also of the Confutatis before. Sorry for the mistakes, it's a bit tricky to sight read. By the way, about this Mozart Requiem, so my goal is to give people an introduction to Requiems because I think they are fantastic works and I think it's not easy works to access. And I think to have some melodies, some part of it, and talking about probably will give an introduction to people and motivate them to go listen to them. And I will link in the description videos on YouTube where you have the recordings of Requiem, where also, in my opinion, one of the best recordings available on YouTube. Because it's important too, listening to nice recordings with good singers, it's quite tricky. The Requiem has a very nice version of Philippe Herweg, which is a Belgian conductor, by the way. He recorded this on historical instruments, and the singers have like a pure voice with no vibrato, and that's really nice for this kind of classical baroque music. Yeah, I recommend listening to this one. The other one, of course, they're a great, Karajan did, of course, a great recording. You have probably Abbado did, like probably most of conductors made great recordings of this one. Some are super slow, some are a bit faster, some are old, some are new, like there is a ton of stuff to listen. So I think the Mozart will be the most easy to listen. And the Mozart Requiem is in two parts. So the second part he basically didn't compose, Süssmayr finished it, but he had some indication, I think, of how to do it. The 7 first parts, Mozart wrote most of them. I mean, the first one he completely wrote, and then towards end of first part, so towards end of the middle, we have some only basses or some other stuff, and they were filling it. And an interesting thing also for a death mass, and actually one of the most famous works of Mozart is the one he didn't write completely himself. It's actually a community work, actually, which is a nice message for Mozart, unconsciously probably for humanity. But I find the second part weak, and I found it. I remember listening to this when I was a teenager. I listened to the first time to Mozart Requiem on my terrace with mini disc at that time. I was shocked by the work. It was like really strong, but there already, without knowing anything about the Requiem, I found the second part less convincing, and then later I learned actually that this one was not completely written by him. So the second Requiem is Berlioz, and that's the one that I know the least, that I still have to listen, but I remember listening to it sometimes, and I found it's a weird, dark piece that would need a lot of listening and a lot of maybe trying it on the piano before I really start to get it. But I listened to some parts again last week. It's from 1837, so it's a bit later. And by the way, I think this one influenced Verdi Requiem, which come much later in 68. Because you hear stuff, you hear the massive things Verdi wants to achieve that Berlioz is already achieving. So Berlioz' Requiem was a bit more a very theatrical work, like with massive orchestra, with instruments in all the corners, with doubling, tripling all the basses and the trumpets and everything. So Berlioz was a bit famous for this, for getting huge orchestras. And Berlioz wants to make you afraid. He wants to scare you. He wants you to feel the Last Judgment, right? That's his view of the Requiem. Unfortunately, I didn't find a satisfying piano score of this, so I will have just to link it and to skip it. But actually, I must say it's the least favorite for the moment of all the Requiems. I'm talking here, 6-1. Probably also because I know it at the least, and I'm sure I will do the work next week to listen more to it, and I'm sure I will start to like it. I was already listening to the beginning. You can hear these obsessive down-going melodies that he's redoing all the time, which is a bit freaky, scary, right? I think that's his goal in his Requiem. The third one, and the most special one, is Liszt Requiem. And the reason is, I was wondering why Liszt made such a strange Requiem. And I didn't like this piece for a long time. And I listened again by accident. I saw it on YouTube and I was curious. I listened again. And I, like always with old Liszt, because 68 is the old Liszt, it's music that needs a lot of time to like. You need to listen a lot to it, well, like most of complex works that are a bit less famous. But he is doing a Requiem only for men choir and organ, which is also a very unusual setting. But actually, it's the closest to what you used to do in the church. So the other Requiems, Berlioz, Mozart, for the moment, you will see the one after, are meant as concert pieces more than actually as a religious piece. And that's where Liszt, I just realized, Liszt being the most religious of all of the people we'll talk about today, and probably the most religious of all composers, maybe just with Bach. Liszt was ultra-religious Franciscan, and at the end of his life, he became even more, because he became a monk, an abbé actually. So I think I'm quite sure, because I was reading about Liszt's idea was to go back, because of course Liszt knew Mozart Requiem and Berlioz Requiem and probably Requiems from people before, from Baroque time. So he probably didn't want to do the same again. He wanted to do something new, and his idea of new was going back to more essential stuff. I think the word that characterizes Requiem is austerity and simplicity. Like I just said, by the instrumentation, there's almost nothing happening. It's sometimes a bit scary. So he's doing this dies irae, for example. That's a bit. He's doing this chromatic stuff that's creating some tensions. But for the rest, it's something you can listen at. Don't listen at it in the background. Listen at it when you are walking somewhere quiet, or sitting, or lying in your bed and trying to meditate or something. I think that's the point of the work there. And Liszt, of course, is following much closer the text of the religious text, right? So this Liszt Requiem is starting super simple and really like church music, with the bass singing. Then you have the tenor and the bass together, which should do like. Very simple, very melodic. The dies irae is, like I said, is doing this. So another nice place of this Requiem is. Are sometimes very modern, and that's a bit like the piece of Liszt called Via Crucis, which is a mix of traditional, like Middle Age music, romantic music, and then very modern sometimes, very chromatic. The next one is Verdi Requiem. It's also from it started in '68 and it's like was premiered or edited in '74, so it's quite late. And that's definitely the most dramatic, the strongest of all of them. It's quite long also. I'm listening to this one since years, and I get the same overwhelming emotions when I'm listening to these pieces. The piece is like terrible sometimes. He's building up like climaxes that are so huge, it's very scary. He's using all the orchestra, the brass instruments, like the trumpets are going sometimes crazy. He's using this huge drum instrument, grosse caisse in French, where it's like hammering this, and when it's a good recording and good orchestra, it's like, it feels like I don't know, like afterlife, right? It feels like not natural. And then if you have good singers like Alagna, for example, Roberto Alagna, who is singing the tenor voice, that's just wonderful, and his wife, Angela, ex-wife, Giorgio, is singing the soprano, then it gets beautiful. I think that's one of the most beautiful work ever written. It's one that gives me the most goosebumps, and I feel like I'm terrified when I'm listening to this piece, and then I feel this huge emotion coming at the same time. It's a mix of all stuff. So it's also known a bit as being almost an opera, but religious, right? Because Verdi was an opera writer. So this opera, this Requiem starts very, very soft, and you hear almost nothing starting. So like even softer than this. Already just this is beautiful, and I have like entry. Then actually one of the strongest plays is also the dies irae with ring in minor, sorry. So sorry for the side tuning again, it's quite tricky for piano. Unfortunately, this is not really working on the piano because it's like full orchestra. These are all the singers screaming together. And then you have this big bass here, which you cannot do on the piano. This is like, I was listening to this with the volume almost on the maximum, and that's like, I don't know how to describe this emotion, but try it. Believe me, you will be shocked. In a good way, right? Another very beautiful place is, well, there are many, until the end this Requiem is just beautiful, but it's this one. So there is like, I think the tenor starting here. Coming up when I just have a glimpse at this. It's just fantastic. Everything in this Requiem is just So Brahms wrote in 1868, so like Liszt, same year, a requiem called Ein deutsches Requiem, so German Requiem. His one is based on the Bible more than the Latin text. That's probably why it's called a German Requiem. Then it's more like a hope-based Requiem instead of judgment and pain. But a quite strong one too, and that's actually a beautiful concert piece. I heard it once in Zurich in Tonhalle, and actually I heard it different times, I think, twice in concert and many times recordings. It's a very soft, it's like a huge symphony, it's beautiful and it's like balanced, and it's, yeah, you feel this hope and softness more than in the other one. There is less pain and fear. Starts magnifically with the bass, like. The intro is beautiful, very soft, and then actually I think one of the best part is the second part that gets huge climax at some point. We have, again, with this bass always coming, like you can tell bass in the Requiem are important because it's kind of ground that's under the earth, deep things, right? So it's this one. You have everyone is saying this. So this is like this choir entering on the climax of the orchestra, and the orchestra pushing it even in the air, like And listen to the recording of this. It's just like it's really strong. Yeah, it's that kind of stuff. So the reason also why I want to talk about the Requiem is because there are pieces who actually touch everyone because they are about death and having lost someone, or saying goodbye to someone, or just the idea of death in itself, which concerns really everyone. And there is nothing stronger than music, I must say. I mean, for me, the strongest emotion I get sometimes in a short time or in a longer time, like is with music. It's so powerful, so strong, and it's so mixed and many emotions at the same time. Plus, intellectual pleasure of hearing, understanding, and following something. Something I really struggle to explain because it's let's say a full body experience. Listen to this one too. So the last one is from Gabriel Fauré, French composer. It's quite famous too, and his one is more hopeful requiem, luminous, light towards the light requiem. He's, by the way, the only one who ends with Paradiso, so that's actually also normally part of the Latin text where it's based on, but many leave it out. I found also a piano score of this one. So this one is from 1887-90, so it's the latest of all the six. This one that starts very, very simple. Where the melody really starts is after this kind of intro that's a bit dark, it gets lighter and clearer. Also beautiful. So listen to the Fauré. It's a very soft one. It's a very peaceful one. It's a short one. It's only 40 minutes. It's very melodic, and Fauré is very good with harmonies. He has these subtle harmonies, these bit complex but easy to follow harmonies. It's very, very nice. Which is a good requiem to end with. And by the way, requiem comes from Requiem aeterna dona eis Domine, which means grant them eternal rest. So give them the eternal rest, the people who just died, right? So normally a requiem is based on these sections starting with Introit Requiem aeternam. Then you have a Kyrie, Lord have mercy. Then Dies Irae, which is a famous also theme a lot of composers even use outside Requiem. Day of Wrath, the judgment, the last judgment. Then you have Sanctus, Holy, Holy. Then you have Agnus Dei, Agnus Dei, Lamb of God. And then you have Lux Aeterna in Paradisum, so eternal light, paradise. That's mostly the structure of a requiem. As I said, I think Mozart, for example, is expanding the Dies Irae or the Sanctus or whatever, another section in subsections sometimes. So yeah, I find it interesting to see all these composers putting almost the deepest expression, the deepest feeling, and like Mozart, for example, Verdi, they like put everything in their requiem. It's like all the emotions, all the feelings and the knowledge they have, musical knowledge inside their work. So they're fantastic works and they're touching everyone because it's a universe theme. And some, like Liszt, Berlioz, need a bit of time to get into it because they are very enigmatic, dramatic, and some are a bit more affordable, are a bit more accessible, like Mozart, I would say, and Fauré, for example. The Liszt one is a bit a special one, maybe not the most emotional one, but for more religious people or more for meditation, this kind of direction more. So yeah, I also wanted to show the different ways different composers were taking with this kind of music. So I hope you enjoyed it and see you next time for next video.